I am now going to be the person on the hot seat. Folks in the hallways, if you can close doors or go out the doors, that would be preferred. And we're off. Dan Primack.
How are you, Dave?
Fortune Magazine, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Folks, I love you, but please shut up or go into the hallway. Shh. There it was.
Everybody, we're going to have kind of a conversation which touches really on two things, I think. And this is me now asking you questions. I would admonish you to, I guess, disagree with yourself as much as you possibly can, and to not, blather on too much with answers.
Me? Blather on?
Don't blather on. So let's talk about the first thing, which is the fact that 500 you guys have decided to generally solicit. For everyone, please stop drinking out of your cups. I think you're supposed to put money in those. So let me ask the two questions which I've never gotten to ask a VC on stage. So the first is, you guys are raising money, correct?
We are raising money.
And the second one is, what's your IRR on your existing funds?
God damn it. I wish I could tell you that.
You totally can. Well, you can, though, can't you?
I believe my lawyer just told me he's not sure if I can tell you that. I would like to.
Any other lawyers
So
here?
let me tell you what I would have previously told you when I wasn't allowed to tell you this is, I can't tell you what my IRR is. You should go talk to my LPs, source the number from them, and then I haven't broken any laws, and they'll be able to tell you what it is. And I want you to do that. And there are LPs in this room who do know those IRRs because I shared those numbers with them yesterday.
Okay, so
do some fucking homework and source it from them.
Let me ask a different question then, which is the reason you're generally soliciting actually to raise money, or is it because there's fears or is it because there's fears you would screw up on a state panel like this and they don't want the SEC after them?
Yes.
It's both.
It's both a defensive and offensive move. I think offensive, we want to raise money. We want to be loud about that. And defensive, I don't want to go to jail, and neither does my legal team.
On the offensive part, do you, out of this $100 million fund, do you have expectations for how much you would expect to raise from people who will originally hear from, either do it via seed investor or hear about you because they read it in the paper or heard about it via general solicitation, as opposed to the traditional way you've been doing it for years?
I think we will get access to more small and more large investors from this process. I don't expect we're going to be crowdfunding, $5, $10 million checks from anybody's grandma. So
are you concerned? There's a lot of firms. Obviously, very few firms have done this since the law changed. Basically, you're
three total.
Three total.
Think, yeah.
There's a thought, at least, that there's a stigma that it makes you look desperate. Does it make you look desperate?
We're pretty much always desperate, so that's not new.
Everybody's desperate for money, but look, you guys have raised funds in the past. It does say, wait, they were able to raise it without doing this in the past. They're now basically, but you did. Now you're basically saying, everybody come to this platform, please invest.
Yep.
Why couldn't you just have raised this money privately, quietly, like everybody else?
I want to be yelling about raising money when I'm raising money. And Mr. Naval Ravikant just walked into the room, and I'm sure he would agree. Like, we want to be public about the fact that we're raising capital from both large and small investors. Previously, when we raised the $29 and $44 million funds, we were not raising that from institutional investors, probably because we were still new and small. Now we're a little bit larger and not quite so new. So I want to make sure all of those institutional investors that we hadn't really talked to or known very much know that we're raising money. I continue to run into people who are like, oh, I didn't realize you were raising money. I thought you were already done. And so I want to make sure that they know we're not done.
Are you guys going to put a little tote board up on your website, like kind of a thermometer, keep going up when you get to your number? Or is that sitting on Seed Invest?
I think I can say, we have 110 million under management right now. We've raised 27 million approximately for this fund, so we still have more that we want to raise. We've been incredibly aggressive about deploying capital. I think we've deployed 80 million in the last 4 years. That might not sound like a lot for other funds, but for us, 800 companies, $80 million is quite active. So we're aggressive about raising capital and deploying it. We think we know what we're doing.
I'll ask one last question about this, which is, it's been basically 24 hours effect almost since it became public you were generally soliciting. Have you got any inbound interest from folks you didn't
yes.
know? You have, legitimately.
Within the first hour, we got an inbound.
Any from institutions?
Yes. Yep. Within the first hour, we got an inbound from an institutional that we had not been in touch with previously.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk about something completely different, which is kind of what you guys do. And this we had Sam Altman up here earlier today. I'm wondering, actually, let me start with this. How do you at this point define Accelerator? And I mean that in the sense of a lot of, Scott was just up here from Andreessen. Now, granted, they're sometimes doing seed stage deals. They've got this huge infrastructure behind them.
Right.
100 employees who are doing marketing, who are working on design, who are advising and doing all this stuff. Can you explain what is an accelerator at this point compared to what a lot of quote traditional venture firms are morphing into, at least in terms of staffing?
Capital, space, mentorship.
When you say capital, what do you mean by capital?
Money. Investing in
You mean
the
having
company.
less of it?
There are a lot of people who run incubators who don't write checks. I think that's much different from people who write checks.
Right, but what's the difference between then an accelerator and a VC fund? VC fund's obviously writing a check. They're
VC
providing
funds write
mentorship.
check. They don't necessarily provide space or day-to-day guidance with the companies.
But they often do now, right? I mean, Andreessen's
Not
got
for
100
early
people
stage.
for operations. That's what, and not operations of the firm, operations for portfolio
But
operations.
generally speaking, they're investing in companies at Series A and later. They do some seed, but that's not the majority of what they do.
So stage is the main distinction right now.
Well, I think there's different accelerators that do different stuff, but yeah, we're focused on companies that are, have product and have a small amount of customers, but are not raising Series A capital yet.
Okay, fair enough. Simple question: are there too many accelerators right now? National, take within the U.S. I know you guys are
Are there too
everywhere.
many accelerators? Do you think there's too many business schools?
Oh,
'Cause
probably.
I think
yeah.
I
Have you
think
seen
there's
how hard it is for them to get
far
jobs when
more
they leave?
business schools than accelerators, and far more unnecessary business schools than unnecessary accelerators.
I didn't ask you to compare business schools. That's like saying, are there too many coffee shops? I'm
There-
asking, are there too many accelerators?
There's definitely
End
too
stop.
many fucking coffee shops.
No
That's
doubt.
absolutely true. There's a lot of shitty accelerators. There's a few good accelerators. There's a lot of shitty business schools. There might be a few good business schools. I think in general, people paying business schools to read about other people's success is not nearly as good as accelerators investing in entrepreneurs to both fail and learn, as well as maybe succeed and learn. So I think if you're going to business school and paying someone $100,000, you might be putting that in the wrong place. I would rather see you in the lab, not on the theory side executing. So
Is it okay?
there's a lot of accelerators. Some of them suck. Probably a lot of them suck. Doesn't phase me. We don't.
Well, does it have a? I guess I'm curious. There's been a conversation that by having more accelerators, which means you have more people who decide to become entrepreneurs, in part because they see a path or they see a place they can physically go. They see a place that's going to possibly give them money. That's
Right.
taking potential engineers who
Oh,
successful.
what a
Let me
sad
ask.
story. This is my former boss, Sean Parker, whining about me funding too many companies.
If
and
I was Sean
stealing.
Parker, I'd be richer than this.
I'm
right
taking all his product managers and engineers and turning
Yeah.
them into founders and entrepreneurs.
now. Well, it failed. Founders and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, no, but I'm asking from a broader perspective. Does that weaken the better companies who can't hire the better people because you've got folks who there's just,
I don't know, and I don't fucking care.
Why don't
Sorry,
you care?
they have to go find their people.
No, but Dave, you
if
care.
they're so shitty at being global CEO unicorns that they can't keep their own people, that's their fucking problem.
No, but you do care because that's who your companies ultimately, in many cases, get sold to. You definitely care if they're strong, if their companies are successful.
They're gonna buy those companies because I have the talent that they somehow can't keep or hire.
Fair enough.
I think more on the incubator accelerator question, like there's a lot of specialization that has not happened yet in terms of what type of accelerators are out there. So, by sector, healthcare, gaming, enterprise, consumer, whatever. There's not been that much specialization in that. There's certainly more specialization by gender, geography, all kinds of perhaps other parts of the stack. Like you could have, an accelerator that's explicitly on a particular software stack, or an accelerator that's focused on particular techniques in online marketing and distribution. So there's quite a bit more specialization to happen. I think the same plain Jane model for accelerators that's like here's a desk and here's $10,000 to $20,000 and I want 10% of your company, that there's probably too much of.
We are seeing some of that specialization. So I'm based in Boston, so I think we've got a hardware accelerator now, and you're starting to see some of that. Do you believe? I'm curious. You guys are more generalists now. You're not doing there's certain things you're not doing, but you're more generalist than say just hardware, just this, just that.
True.
Do you think that ultimately specialization, where these things go, if I'm a startup, does it in the end make more sense if the specialized accelerator is good and not a fly by night? If it's good, does it make more sense for me to go there as opposed to say go to a generalist, which might have had a lot of success?
Yes. In fact, Tomas Corte runs AngelPad, I think runs an excellent program that's as high caliber, if not higher, than YC and 500 and others. And he does 12 companies twice a year here in San Francisco, New York. He's awesome.
Is that something you consider then? You guys break out by geography, but you don't break out by industry. Is that the next step for you?
We do Somewhat. We would probably have a significant emphasis on video, on e-commerce. We've done a lot in Bitcoin recently. There's a few areas where we pick our spots. Certainly on family tech and education, we do a lot. Probably the areas that we specialize most on, I would say, is we definitely are bringing in a large percentage of international companies. And we definitely have a significant emphasis on online marketing and distribution, which tends to be helpful to most everyone, so that's a good area for us to generalize.
I'm curious, within the, say, take out, Mexico, Latin America, within this market here, particularly within the Bay Area.
This market, U.S. or Valley?
No, Valley. Say Valley, but actually say U.S. broadly speaking, but the Valley. You said there's some, AngelPad might be better than YC, but YC at least reputationally is still tops.
Did I say that?
I believe you did.
Probably getting myself into fucking trouble.
Did. Yeah, it's explicitly.
I think that both YC and AngelPad run excellent programs.
No, I believe AngelPad better than YC, and better than 500.
Higher touch.
Higher touch.
Higher touch.
Well, do you feel at 500 YC does have the perception as being the top of the top and the most exclusive and hardest to get into?
They are certainly the big dog.
They are the big dog. Does that mean you feel you're fighting for the scraps?
Sometimes, yeah. I would say we have the sloppy seconds position right now behind YC. We occasionally have sent companies from our accelerator to now go through YC. It's happened both ways now. We are a very frequent investor in YC companies. We're probably number 2 or number 3. We've done 60 or 70. They started 5 years ahead of us. They have billion-dollar companies. We probably don't out of our accelerator yet. So yeah, I'm chasing their tail a good bit. I would say we're not losing distance. We're probably gaining. So Sam said today they have 717 companies. I know we're at 800 companies. Not all of those are accelerator. They have probably more than 1,500 founders. We have about 1,500. So we're at least at the same scale or level as them. We've done that in 4 years, not 9 or 10.
You talked about, or with AngelPad, you talked about high touch. How do you view the high touch issue? Because what? So you're basically averages out. Now I know you've gotten busier as time goes on. It's average out basically 200 companies a year, right? For you guys?
Yeah, but per partner, it's probably about 20. And I would say for the accelerator,
20 per year.
We aim for about 20 investments per investing partner per year.
So how high touch with 20 per year? And assuming that person's also trying to source other deals.
Yes.
How high touch can you realistically be with it? How much can you really provide for these guys?
Not so much. Although for our accelerator programs, we do 30 companies per batch, and there's about a structural unit of about 6 to 7 people that are managing those 30 companies. So it's probably more like about a 5-to-1 company ratio per person on the team member, so we feel like that's doable.
It's doable. Actually,
at seed stage, we don't need quite as much high touch as we are in accelerator. So in the accelerators phase, we see those companies every day because we have a resident program for 3-4 months.
At the accelerator stage, what do you feel outside of the financial piece of it? What's your responsibility as a startup? In other words, when the startup leaves that accelerator phase, what did you need to provide them to have done your job?
We try and get them ready to raise at least $250,000, hopefully more like $500,000 to $1 million. We try and connect them with other people, not investors, but mentors and other founders so that they have access to skill sets in engineering, design, marketing in particular. We usually are trying to get them from either zero revenue or modest revenue below 10K to hopefully, we'd like to get everybody to $1 million a year run rates. That probably happens for about a third of the companies.
Do you have entrepreneurs who, after the accelerator stage is over, come to you and say, Dave, what you guys promised me, you didn't deliver it?
Occasionally, yeah.
And what's your response to that? Do you give them money back? I'm sorry, the equity back.
We haven't done that yet.
Well, because if I go to a store and I buy something and it doesn't work,
no, it's a good offer. Okay, let me think about that. We might do that. We might do that.
There might be a bunch.
It's not a large percentage, I would say. Actually, quite the opposite.
But I wonder, broadly speaking, we hear about this accelerator boom, right? And how many of the accelerators, broadly speaking, fail, and how so many of the companies. And I wonder, should that become part of the accelerator model? That there's certain, whether they be milestones, there are certain things that if those things don't come to pass for whatever reason, or maybe for some defined reasons, the equity goes back.
Reasonable suggestion. I think we have said to a few companies that were on the fence about taking our offer, like, come sit with us for 30 days. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. So we did sort of give that money back guarantee offer to a few folks. I don't think we've given it to people after they've left the program. I'll have to think about that one. But you're right. That's a good challenge. We
So
should
you might have
consider
some
that.
new inbound interest from taking money from you instead of giving it to you.
Yeah, I kind of worry about the occasional avaricious founders going through the program and then like asking for their money back so that they can have less dilution. But I might take that risk.
Do you guys? One of the things about 500 is you guys are physically everywhere, and you have teams. You have teams around the globe at this point.
We're aiming for that. We're in 6 countries.
600, but in multiple continents. I mean, not. Yes. I mean, you're all. Do you?
Latin America, Asia.
Sam, when he was up here, talked about the centrality, and this gets talked about with YC a lot, right? This issue, they want people to come here, and you.
They have a very specific mission. I think it's been working, but we have a difference of opinion on a few points.
Okay, and so let me ask about that, which is how do you, particularly you who kind of oversees this broader organization, explain why you think that the model you have works better than that as opposed to bringing people, whether it be here or somewhere else?
So I think Sam has come around to our story in that they're doing a lot more women in international, which is recent behavior. As much as Sam is spinning those metrics, that's very recent change, last 6 to 12 months. We've been doing that for the last 4 years pretty consistently. But I'm glad to see that he's doing it. I think that's the right message. The big differences are, like he mentioned, PG has not wanted to have a resident program, and I think the reason he suggested is they don't want to infuse any other culture. They want the company to develop their own culture. I understand that, but I disagree with that. I think there's a lot of benefits to a resident program, and we aim for 30 companies and about 75 to 100 people per batch. We think there's a lot of benefits to that.
Are there certain tenets, I guess maybe is the best way to say it, but there is still this overarching organization, it's 500 startups, whether it be in Mexico or whether it be down the street. Are there certain, are you able to find kind of certain tenets which you think are applicable, whether the company's here, whether the company's in Africa, whether the company's in Mexico City? That you guys try to instill in these companies across the board?
Yes. And move fast, break things, to steal a page from Mark Zuckerberg, is the general sentiment there. But maybe I would say another difference from Sam and YC that we were talking about on stage is I don't think it's a good idea for all of those companies to raise $10 million. I think there's a lot of people who have a reasonably high shot at creating a business that's going to be worth $10 to $100 million, and I don't think they should do the same things to do that as opposed to going for $1 billion. Yes, you can make that choice later, but there's a lot of companies that do take too much money too early and take small exits off the table when it's not clear they're going to be a unicorn. And so I think there's some binary decisions that happen, for talented founders who have the option to raise only 1 or 2 million or do 5 or more. Sometimes raising 5 or more is too fucking much.
One last question for you, and I think I've been told we're out of time, which I didn't realize. My apologies. Which is I asked you earlier about the number of companies you funded. You've talked a lot about 800. You're known, and I think you dispute the second piece of this. I mentioned to you when we were talking before. I was going to ask you about your reputation is for spray and pray, and you said spray yes, pray no.
Spray,
so are you an investing atheist? What exactly is the second piece of this?
We are no stranger to scale. I think that there is a manageable amount of scale, which for us is about 20 investments per year. Half of those will go through Accelerator, where there's high touch. Half will go through not being high touch. I think probably a third of those will survive at some level of interesting scale in the next 2 years. So
is that about the amount of time? How long in general to know if a company is going to completely flop or at least survive? How long does it usually take you?
To be brutally honest, we can figure out if they're idiots in 3 to 6 months. We can't figure out if they're geniuses for about 18 to 24 months. Genius emerges slowly.
Good. I think that's the time we had. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.